Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. This is Fate Mag Radio. I am your host, Kat Hobson. We are the online voice of Fate Magazine and publications since 1947. We have a new edition coming out, and if you have not renewed your subscription, what are you waiting for? This is still a fantastic magazine with updated current information and one of the best editors in the business. Go ahead and go to fatemag.com. and check out the archives, check out the new edition, and renew your subscription should you have let it lapse. Because you know what? Things happen. We understand that. We just want to make sure you enjoy your magazine. I am going to tell you that I attended an event last night in Tennessee. It was the Athenaeum in Columbia, Tennessee. This was also a place where you could bring things for the tornado victims there, and we took things as well that were taken over to Cookeville, Tennessee, where it just looks like somebody came in, a kid went in and took all his Legos down. So there was a great loss of life there. Of course, any is too much. So if you could please keep these communities in your prayers. I know that whether you're chanting, praying, soliciting your Creator, whatever you believe in, that you have complete faith in, please do it for these people, because they've got an awful long way to go. Everything is not even cleared out yet. So if you could just keep them in mind, we can lift them up. That's what we're about, right? Go ahead and manifest that stuff. I know you get tired of hearing me say it. I'm going to keep on anyway. I have to tell you that I am really excited about tonight's show. This is a guest that matters to me. She has had a very interesting life. She has been a lifelong experiencer in ufology. She has been a lifelong abductee, contactee. She has had relationships with the people that she interacted with. She's a messenger. They give her messages and she shares them. And I think that is a great honor as well as a great responsibility. She has a very special story, and I just cannot wait for you to hear about her, because she is best telling this in her own words. We're a little bit late tonight, and we are not going to shortchange you. We are going to go equally over here. Nancy Tremain is also a participant in the Hybrid Project, and we're going to let her tell us about that too. I heard Nancy the very first time she ever lectured, when she had first written her book, Symbiosis. I cannot have more trouble with that word. And she has a brand new book out, and we're going to talk about that too. So, Nancy Tremain, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Kat. I really appreciate this opportunity.
You know, I know how nervous you were before you did your first lecture. And you handled it like a champ. I know you're a little bit nervous about this, and that's okay. And we did seem to get a little bit gobsmacked, for lack of a better word. And that's okay, because that kind of follows you around. And I understand that. So it follows me around sometimes too. But I know that you have some audio that you want to share. And we have somebody helping with that. So where would you like to go first?
Well, I think we have to start with the impetus where all this started for me.
Absolutely.
And that was in the summer of 1961. And then I'll take you to where I am today. It started in the summer of 1961 with my girlfriend, Cindy. Now, I met Cindy when I was 9 years old. We were neighbors, and we became really good friends. We did everything that little kids do. We rode bikes, played with dolls. We met when we were 9. But in the summer of 1961, when we were 12 years old, our lives were turned upside down.
At the very least.
Yes. I was in her home playing, and her dad called us outside, and it was still daylight out, and there was a ship hovering above the tree between our two homes, and it had flashing or pulsating red, green, and white lights, and there wasn't any fear. It was just awe. It was like walking into a movie. Right. And we stood there in silence, and her father was playing with a telescope and adjusting it. And neighbors started to come out of their homes. Now, Novi, Michigan back then was still a village. It was all land and farms, and houses were just starting to be built. So somebody must have called the police, because 2 police officers quickly joined us, and they stood with all of us. Cindy, her brother, her sister, her father, and the neighbors were outside on their lawns. And we all watched as a car was coming down Meadowbrook Road, which is the road that my home was on. And the car kept going closer and closer and put itself right underneath the ship. And a beam of light came out of the bottom of the ship, and it was aimed at the car. And when it hit the car was immobilized. And 50 years later, I would find out that who was driving that car was Martin Cohn in an unmarked car. And the two police officers that were standing with us, one of them turned out to be Cindy's brother-in-law, like 10 years later. So there were 3 police officers on the scene. Now, when Martin Cohn's car was immobilized, he called the police chief at the station on the two-way radio. They had two-way radios back then. And he said, "Strange object overhead, send cars."
Plural, right?
Yes,
I found that fascinating.
Yes, yes.
I found that very interesting. Because he knew it was going to take plural if anything was going to happen at all.
Mm-hmm. And I'm jumping up and down and all excited, and Cindy's yelling at me and trying to calm me down. You know, I don't know what I was doing. But somehow the scene went from that, jumping up and down, and the car being immobilized, and me tugging on one of the officer's arms, asking him if it was real and to do something. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I know, I'm at 7:30. My father was like a drill sergeant. Mm-hmm. So I never put together the missing time. I just knew what I remembered. And I would draw a picture of that ship every year, and I would discard it. I did that for my sanity. We were silenced that night. I forgot to say that. Yeah. My father silenced me that night. And I just never spoke of it. Cindy never spoke of it. We never spoke of it between ourselves or to husbands or therapists or to anyone. I did go to therapy 50 years.
Wow.
I did go to therapists over the years, and I would tell every therapist, please hypnotize me. There is something inside that needs to come out. But they didn't. If they had, I wouldn't have suffered as long as I did.
Well, of course, yes.
But I was left with a lot of whys that I needed answered. Why did I stand on the headboard of my bed at night and so many nights, asking the ship to come back and get me? Who was I talking to? And then why did I draw that ship every year? And why did I keep asking the therapist to hypnotize me? And what was that burning sensation that would come to my nose every year or so? And I knew it was attached to the memories that were locked inside. There was this burning smell that I would get, and I knew that it was attached to these memories. And I would come to find out that it was electromagnetism.
Really?
Yes, from the ship. That smell, that burning, that was one of the senses that I was left with. So fast forward 50 years. I awakened on September 1st of 2011, and I awakened Cindy a week or two later. And then I awakened the police chief of Novi in October of 2011, and the three of us shared memories and put the pieces of this puzzle together.
Well, he was very special because out of all the people that you would not expect to be your champion going through this, right, would be the chief of police. And yet his memories were so strong of that night that that when you reached out to him, he was right there.
He called me. He made the first phone call. I had given him a letter. And then the letter said, there was a UFO in Novi in 1961. It traumatized a lot of people. We were silenced. He called me, and when I answered the phone, I said, oh, and a lot of people thought they were crazy. And the first thing he said to me is, I've got your letter, and you're not crazy. It really did happen. And the car that was immobilized, I believe, was Martin Cohn, my officer, in an unmarked car. And he told me that he had called him on the two-way radio. And the chief went back to the scene. A couple of hours later, he was bombarded with phone calls from residents for over 20 minutes. So,
well, you know, I find that fascinating because this entire town, almost this entire town, experienced this with you and with Cindy and your parents. I mean, this was not just isolated people. Or her dad.
Yeah, her dad. Yes.
So this was not just you. This was not just children saying, oh my gosh, we saw something in the sky. I mean, this was definitive.
And it was daylight. And it was daylight. And I have it narrowed down to a 3-day period, July 26th, 27th, and 28th. And how I arrived at those dates was it was the summer of 61, the sermon at the church sermon. There was a newspaper article talking about the sermon that was going to be the following Sunday, talking about the Martian question. Now, what church in 1961 would give such a sermon? But he had to calm down the residents of Novi. It was very traumatic. And we didn't know at that time that this was much more than a sighting, that this was a very complex experience.
Well, it certainly evolved into that for you because you actually have had lifelong experiences.
Yes.
Am I correct? Yes.
Yes, and it's very hard for Cindy. She died she had one regression, and she was dead 10 months later. They found her on her kitchen floor. So, and her husband had talked her into having a regression. She didn't want to. And I had 5 regressions, but after the third one, I really didn't need any more. Everything was there. All the memories started to surface. And even when Bagall called me for the first time in October of 2011, he said, you know, I haven't thought about this in years. Well, it was like we had all been put to sleep. It was like the Oz effect. And then we were all programmed to awaken at the same time. And today was pretty rough day. I was at the Chief Bagall's funeral just a couple hours ago. He was 99 and a half.
That's a fine life, isn't it?
Yes.
Such a long life, so many changes that were seen.
He helped me from 2011 until 2017. He fought for me to be heard. But I just realized just recently that it was more than that. He needed to be heard just as much as I did. This was very traumatic for him. His nephew at the funeral today, I'd never met him personally. That we've instant messaged over the past couple years, and he said the chief talked about you all the time.
How sweet.
Yes. But he needed to be heard. This was traumatic. This was his police. This was his police force. This was, he never married and he never had children. And I saw him as not just a friend, but he was a father to me. And in many of them, I recorded our conversations over those years from 2011 and 2017. And you can hear him. He's like a father, and you can hear the love in his voice. And you can hear him fighting for me. We did an interview with the Detroit Historical Society in 2017. They didn't release the interview, and I'll be releasing the entire thing bit by bit. But he fought for me, and he wanted that interview to be put out. But the Novi police, of course, didn't want to ruin his stellar reputation.
Mm-hmm.
He was more than a police chief. He had a law degree. All you have to do is Google his name, and you'll see page after page of Police Chief Lee Bagall. In fact, they just put up a new video of him at 99 speaking. He had his wits about him. He was a very bright, very gentle, loving man.
So neat, though, because to be out at 99 sharing information, going and public speaking.
Yes, yes.
He must have been just in such great...
Well, he said, I want to do this interview with the Detroit Historical Society, not only for you, but for all the people that suffered. He knew his life was, coming to an end, and he wanted everyone to know. And probably now, I'd like to hear the recording of me and Cindy having a conversation after we had just awakened, and I was recording our conversations as we were coming to terms with what had happened to us. So, if you're ready to play that now.
Perfect.
And I don't hear it playing.
We will.
Okay.
We have a secret sound man joining us, so y'all just hang loose.
I know, and that's why people don't talk about it. We're not the only ones.
No. Help. Yeah. Stop. It's nothing but static. Which was my worst nightmare.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I have two of these audios loaded up here. So one of them is him. When we get to that point.
Well, anyone that you could play right now. I have Chief Bagall talking about the government coming in, doing a military investigation.
Oh, well, that one I don't have loaded up. They were giving me, of course, this is a topic that does have high strangeness fully around it. And these were the only two that it would let me load. So here we go. One is you, one is him after you've reached him.
You are Novi, and your words are powerful, and they just want to hear about what you remember about that evening.
Some unknown force is trying to keep these.
I just help you a lot, I think, if we do. You know what? It will help me more than you could ever imagine.
That was the sheriff. And, he absolutely wanted to get to the bottom of this situation. I was just so impressed with this. And this is actually you and your regression describing the craft. So
that was Cindy. Mm-hmm. That's Cindy.
When she's talking about it being silver with the lights. That was Cindy? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's what this is going to be.
That was her one regression.
Okay, well, let's play this right quick.
It was round, and I remember green, red, silver.
I can't hear it.
Well, it was actually a brilliant recording because you've already heard it, so it's okay. But our listeners were able to. It did.
Oh, good. Okay.
And, something that I was very impressed with is the fact that when she was talking about you, and I don't know if he has the one where you're gone. You're jumping, right? and then B, you're gone.
Yes.
And that to me spoke volumes, because this was she has regressed back to her childhood as she is discussing this or describing this. And, she thought you were crazy, really, because you were jumping up and down. And if you have not read her books, you have got to, because she did a great job with the descriptions and the messaging that she received to share with us as well. So go to Amazon.com and find Nancy Tremain. She's brilliant. So do we have those, Jeff?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I have another one here. It's just a little 5-second one. So I'm going to play it. Okay? Let's see if we can get this one to go.
I'm feeling like I'm still looking at it, wondering what it is.
Something that astounds me is that these were actually very clear.
Very clear.
Recordings.
Very clear.
And I have, as I've been listening to them, I have just been overwhelmed, truly.
And I've got hours and hours of conversations. Yes.
Absolutely. And, this is something that I found to be really pretty neat. So that one was actually, if I'm not mistaken, let me look just to verify. This is actually our first time using these, so I'm very excited that it's working.
Yes. Yep.
That that one was the wondering what it is, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Cindy was saying, looking at it, wondering what it is. Yeah, I'm still looking at it, wondering what it is.
And then this one is another one from her regression, which is the, what is it? What is it? So, and these aren't like.
I was the one that kept saying, "What is?" And she was very upset.
Nancy screaming and yelling. What is it?
So I think that was pretty. She was between the two of you with all of this. It really is amazing. But this is the Nancy's Gone. Okay?
Yeah.
So just bear with me.
And then I don't see Nancy on the road anymore. And wondering, and it was getting dark. It was like she had to be home. I don't know when my dad called her dad. I don't know what they said. And then Nancy disappeared.
And that was her talking about she doesn't know when her dad called your dad.
Yeah.
But you just disappeared.
Disappeared.
You were
yes,
there, and then you weren't. So,
yeah.
When that happened, oh my goodness, we missed our break, but I will go and put one in there. When this happened to you, I was so stunned when I was listening to these, because it's one thing to hear you lecture about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It is completely another to hear someone who watches you disappear. You're there, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
that was overwhelming to me, because, I knew how emotional you were with the lecture.
Yes.
This was different.
Yes.
This
that
was
was
way
the glue
different.
that held Cindy and I together. We had a bond, such a close bond.
Well, but it really was frayed after this, wasn't it? For quite some
There
time.
There were periods where I would have to get away from her because her drinking was so bad. And chain smoking, 5 packs of cigarettes a day. And I'm not exaggerating, 5 packs a day. There were cigarette burns all around her recliner in the carpet. She was never for 1 second without a cigarette. One time I asked her if she'd just please go 3 minutes. 3 minutes. She had She always had a drink in her hand or in a paper bag. She literally drank herself to death. And I'm so grateful that she had that regression. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how much she loved me. She had the regression at my apartment on the same couch that I had 4 of my 5. And she didn't know I was going to record her. I waited till he had her under. And then I had to leave the room because she had me crying.
Oh.
She loved me so much. She was more worried about me. She was on board for a very short period of time. I would not quit screaming and get Cindy, get Cindy. You've got to get Cindy. So they did bring her on board, and and she remembered this in the regression. She was placed into this cylindrical clear tube, and she was able to watch what they were doing to me, and that scared her.
Oh.
When they put the needle in my navel. But then she kept saying to the regression therapist, why did they let me go and keep Nancy? Why? And then he asked her about it, and she said, I think that God wanted me to be with Nancy. I think that's why I was there.
Well, not far off.
No. And she really loved me. She really loved me. And she talked about after the regression. She talked about making sure that I was home and that I was safe. She couldn't go to bed or go to sleep until she knew that I was home. She had to know that. So my father let her see me. And that was the last we ever, yes.
That was astounding.
That was it, yeah. And then it was the silence, and it was as if it never happened. It was as if the memories were stored at the back of my mind, but I still kept standing on my headboard, longing for that ship to come back, but not remembering what had happened.
You know, I personally found that astonishing, that after what happened, you know, with being taken, with being there, with the things that happened, and you were so anxious to be taken back.
Yes.
And this was not the adult Nancy. This was the child Nancy.
This was the child Nancy that longed to be with them, to leave her parents, to leave everything, to be with these.
It was just astonishing. Of course, you had, to cover some of that, you did not have a pleasant relationship with your mom.
No, I never did.
So that was a bit of the feed for that.
My relationship with my father was very close, and I think there was an actual jealousy there. And after this incident, my father and I were really bonded. So I think that was the reason that there was a disconnect between me and my mother. You know, Dr. John Mack was so ahead of his time when he talks about what happens to experiencers as they become aware of what is going on. You know, this expansion of psychic or intuitive abilities and the heightened reverence to nature with the feeling of having a life-preserving mission, which is what I have,
right.
And the collapse of space-time perception and the sense of entering other dimensions, realities, and a conviction of possessing a human alien identity, a feeling of connection with all creatures. And he said that they're all such frequent features of the abduction phenomenon that they are the basic elements of the process. And I'm an empath. I am totally tapped and plugged into the oneness of humanity. And there is an inability for me to separate myself from the emotions of others.
Well, I'm an empath as well, and I have a great deal of difficulty separating myself. So
it's exhausting.
Yes.
It is, yeah, exactly. And also, if you're an experiencer, you have to reassess everything that you believe to be true. And you have to question your place in the world and live in this new world upside down. It was a physical, a need for physical, and I've gone from the need for the physical. The last time I had a physical was in 2015, a physical relationship with the beings.
Well, that's a whole different topic. You know, I think that is a large part of where people get confused about this. And that's okay. It's okay for them to be confused. It's not their journey.
Yes.
I think that you have done a remarkable job of sharing that, because that's something that wigs people out.
Yeah.
And and that's a large part, I believe, of why people tried to keep you silent for so long.
Exactly. You know, like I say, I knew there were going to be consequences when I came out. I understood that, but I didn't know how bad it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, because once you let that genie out, you can't put it back in. And no one talks about the ugly side of ufology. And I want to address the ugly side of ufology for a minute. You know, no one talks about the egos, the jealousies, and the politics involved in this, and the competition. There are a lot of people that I thought were my friends that didn't want to see me succeed. You know, they were on my side until they saw I was succeeding. And these TV shows, these crazy TV shows, when aliens attack, I don't want to see one more of those crazy shows with a researcher telling an experiencer's story to scary music with terrible acting. We need to tell our own stories. If it weren't for Dr. Ray Hernandez and Sir Grant Cameron, you know, they've brought a new awareness to humanity. And this connection that consciousness has to this afterlife, missing time, psychic abilities, they're all related. And people, it would just be so amazing if what we can do if we don't care who gets the credit. The egos.
That's exactly right, because it is all about that.
Yes.
You know, there's no reason to be jealous. You know, because I'm sure that other than you having developed your relationship with a species that everyone universally is afraid of.
Exactly.
Okay?
The reptilians.
Because of how they're presented. And, you know, I just don't know. You know, it seems like it was such, I'm going to tell you, I have only looked at this from the science side. You were the first experiencer that I truly heard talk the first time.
What?
Oh, it sounds like Jeff is running an audio
In the
and
background.
yeah. But I wanted to just say that to come forward like that, you were the first person I heard. I had been focused on the science side of ufology.
For all the people that can't come forward because they have a lot to lose. I didn't have a lot to lose. I'm 70 years old now. And
you absolutely are such a beautiful woman. I would never have thought that you were 70.
Thank you.
But you, when you came forward, I think that you liberated people. And while we have not talked about it privately, there is another person that I met who has had part of your experience. And obviously I didn't mention who I had spoken with, who had also, who had the same thing. But when she was describing her experience, I just said, have you ever done this? Has this happened to you? And she just kind of looked at me. I said, it's okay. It really is okay because I know someone else this has happened to, and I'm just curious to know if this is a normal thing with this environment. And surprisingly, I got a positive answer. It was bizarre. It was far beyond what I anticipated. And I knew to ask that question because of having the opportunity to hear and speak with you.
There are a lot of female experiencers and male experiencers with the reptilians, and there are several different species of reptilians. And I have several modes of communication with them, be it telepathic, visions that they give me. They're almost like movie clips. And a knowing. Sometimes I just know things. I don't know how, but I know. I've had physicists call me, and I wanting to know how I know things that I know. I don't know. And illustrations that are placed in my head, and I'm told to draw them. And I'm an awful artist. You can see my artwork in my books.
But you know what? You put it out there. You gave it a shot, girl. You did great. Oh, but that being said, we are going to go to our second break. And, y'all, I hope that you're enjoying this. We are going to be getting into some nitty-gritty and details. And you don't want to miss this, particularly when we move into the messaging. So we'll be right back. Y'all come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. You are listening to us here on www.fatemag.com as well as WBHM-DB.com or in your Spreaker app, because you know what? It's just sitting right out there. Feel free to go ahead and favorite that link, and thank you so much for being here. And I know that you're enjoying Nancy as well. I am so fortunate to be able to have a conversation with her, and this doesn't happen much. So y'all enjoy too. Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, what is your, what to you, this is kind of out of sync, but I'm just been so curious, and I didn't get to that point yet to review. What is, in your opinion, the most important message that you've been asked to bring?
Wow.
There's a lot. I know there's a lot, but in your opinion.
I think that we, and it's so simple, that we have to learn how to rule by love, not war. I think that is probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we could just learn that. If we could just figure it out. You know, it matters so much.
And thoughts are real and have a creative energy.
Mm-hmm. And they manifest.
Exactly. And the body is a sending and receiving antenna. And one of the very first messages that I got was, if you want to know who we are, you only have to look in the mirror. We are you. We are all one. And my destiny is to learn what I am and to express it perfectly. That was one of the messages they gave me. And I'm still trying to learn how to do that. And our messages are not for everyone. Many will be left behind.
You know, that sounds almost biblical.
There is a biblical undertone to so many. We are here to avert war. We are here to save you from yourselves.
I wish they would step that one up.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything happens exactly as it is. That's where I'm at now with this preordained. Everything has to happen the way it does. Every instant is preordained.
You know, I absolutely agree with that. And that is one of my mantras, because it's very easy to get caught up in the immediacy of every situation, right? You have to be just fixing and doing and whatever. Well, real life doesn't work like that, because you just have to follow your guide and your flow.
Yep.
And we as a species have a hard time with that, I think, unless you're someone of the patience level of Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama. You know, it's just really difficult because we are not a patient people.
No, we aren't.
We're a 2-minute soundbite for whatever matters in our head. You know, it's not ever just a 20-minute meditation that you can actually get something working for you. It's a tough way to look at things sometimes.
It is. Well, I received a very large download. And by download, it's an enormous amount of information given in just a split second. Mm-hmm. And it was during a tap-in. I call it a tap-in. And the last time that I can remember the physical of being on the ship. And with Mr., who I lovingly refer to, my information comes from Mr. or the collective mind. Mr. was the pilot of the ship in 1961.
Really? I didn't.
Yes.
I didn't
Yes.
remember that.
Yes, he was human in human form in 1961, so that I wouldn't be afraid. And
That's
when I
pretty
saw him,
cool. I didn't realize. Yeah, people are just so shocked by these things, and
he looked just like anybody's father. Yeah, he's just a man, an average man. But then there were the small grays on board who did all the tests on me. And
How
when they
much
were,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. What?
When you were experiencing that initially when you were young, that had to just be blowing your mind. And even though you had someone there who appeared as a human who was there with you, it still had to just be so uncomfortable and painful, because part of it was painful, and it was so hard, and you were so young.
I was mad. As I was leaving, the female on board walked me back to the pilot, and I said, "Mister, why did you let them hurt me?" And he said, "Your pain was perceived. We would never have allowed you to feel pain. I want you to find the positive in everything. There's a positive in everything that you'll experience in life, and I want you to find that positive." And there is. In the worst of times, you can always look back and find the positive.
You can. I will agree with that. I have been in some icky places, and there was always something to take from it in a positive fashion.
Yep. And I realized that I signed up for this. I signed up for this.
Is it a soul contract?
It is, absolutely, yes. This is my mission. This has been my mission since 2011 to today, and every day for the rest of my life, is to speak for those who can't speak, to come forward for those who can't come forward, and to get the ones who can to come out. There's strength in numbers.
Well, there is strength in numbers, and this is something that the government is fully aware of. This is something that certain researchers are fully aware of. It's just so difficult to understand why, when so many people are living this, they still try to hide it and act like these people are having some sort of an emotional or mental breakdown when they know it's fact.
Exactly. I got to break this up. I live in a very small, it's a village actually, Fowlerville. It's called Fowlerville, Michigan. Population, very small. I got pulled over by a female police officer in the middle of the afternoon. I haven't had a ticket in 20 years. And I put down my window. I said, "What's the problem, officer?" And she said, "Well, really nothing, but not your headlight, but whatever that little light next to the headlight, it was out." And I said, "Well, it's daytime. I don't have to have my lights on." And she asked for my driver's license and my registration. And she came back to the car, and it was very weird. She said, "You have a nice day, Nancy." And I said, "Why did you call me Nancy?" And she said, "It's because it's your name." And I said, "No, it's not. Look at my driver's license. My name is Linda Nancy. The only people that know my name is Nancy. I've been called Nancy since birth. Are people that know me, you know." Mm-hmm. And she looked at my driver's license, and then she looked at me and she said, "Odd, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it's very odd." And then a couple of weeks ago, she got behind me and was driving behind me into my apartment complex.
Is she a human?
I think she's a plant government.
I think so, too.
Is what I think.
That's what I'm getting from that.
And I ran up to my neighbor's door, and I said, "Let me in." I said, "It's that same damn cop. She's following me." she's a brand new cop in Fowlerville. So I'm really cautious. Every time I get in my car now, I ask a friend who was a police officer at one time to find out who she is and where she came from. I mean, just the way she said, "Have a nice day, Nancy," it was a very intimidating voice. And she could tell I wasn't too thrilled when I said, "Why did you call me Nancy?" And she said, "Because it's your name." No, it's not. So.
That was an interesting comeback, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was. Yep.
Well, what did you take from the fact that this woman has just shown up and is doing this harassment?
I think she's here to keep an eye on.
So she's not somebody that's from that village?
I get the emails I get, and the people that I've been in contact with that have contacted me. Quantum physicists, I'll tell you, I didn't get through science. I mean, because of some of the strange things that happened to me.
But it's because you've been in the craft. You have seen what they do.
Exactly. Yes. And I'd like to talk about the event in 2015 when I was downloaded.
I would like that too, but we've only got like 3 minutes before we do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to go ahead, for reasons that will be obvious later, and take us to our newscast. So we will be back, and y'all come back too. This is about to get even more fascinating, if that's possible. And you know what? You never know. Maybe we'll hear a little good news. Always hopeful. Always looking. We'll be back. Oh, this is also a great time to stretch your legs, fill up your coffee mug or stein, whatever your beverage of choice is, and maybe throw a cartwheel. We'll be back.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from BetterHelp, online counseling by licensed professional counselors specializing in issues including depression, stress, and anxiety. Visit BetterHelp.com/news to learn more and get 10% off your first month.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. A cruise ship with nearly 24 confirmed cases of coronavirus that's in limbo off the coast of Northern California will stay put as officials work on plans to get the passengers to facilities around the country. The state's governor says the ship is scheduled to dock in Oakland tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says there are more than 500 confirmed cases of the virus in the United States. NPR's Amy Held reports with more than 100 cases, Washington State is considering implementing mandatory measures.
Governor Jay Inslee says he's looking at extending what have been voluntary decisions about avoiding public gatherings and making them mandatory. He spoke to CBS's Face the Nation.
We are contemplating some next steps, particularly to protect our vulnerable populations in our nursing homes and like, and we are looking to determine whether mandatory measures are required.
So far, more than a dozen deaths have been recorded in the state, mostly at a Seattle area nursing home. Amy Held, NPR News.
Meanwhile, the number of deaths in Italy from coronavirus shot up 57% today. It's the largest daily increase since the outbreak surfaced just over 2 weeks ago. NPR's Silvia Poggioli reports northern Italians are trying to adapt to new draconian measures that have put a quarter of the population under quarantine.
The Civil Protection Agency announced the death toll rose to 366 Sunday from 133 the day before, and the total number of cases leapt from about 5,800 to more than 7,300, another record spike. The latest numbers were issued hours after the government put the entire northern region of Lombardy and 14 provinces in neighboring regions under total quarantine until April 3rd. The cordon sanitaire will encircle 16 million people in an effort to curb further spread of the disease. The new measures mean nobody can get in or out of the red zones unless they can show evidence of urgent professional or health needs. Silvia Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
The two major Democratic presidential contenders are using every minute they have left to campaign ahead of the 6th primary contest this Tuesday, and they're using the time strategically. NPR's Scott Detrow reports both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders got key endorsements today.
While former Vice President Joe Biden campaigns in Mississippi, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is in Michigan, the top prize in Tuesday's primary. Michigan has the most delegates. It also holds important symbolic value as a state Sanders won 4 years ago in a surprise upset, and a state Democrats have to win in November. Sunday morning, Biden rolled out his latest endorsement from a one-time candidate, California Senator Kamala Harris. Sanders countered with an endorsement from someone who ran against Biden in 1988, civil rights leader Jesse Jackson. The two campaigned together in Grand Rapids. Scott Detrow, NPR News, traveling with the Sanders campaign.
And you're listening to NPR News. The families of the victims of a passenger plane that was shot down over Ukraine in 2014 are staging a silent protest in the Netherlands. They're angry over Russia's lack of cooperation and finding out who is responsible for the downing. As Terry Schultz reports, this comes a day before 4 men go on trial in the incident in Amsterdam.
The 298 white chairs outside the Russian embassy in The Hague are arranged like seats in an airplane. Each chair represents a life lost when MH17 was shot down in July 2014 by what investigators have determined was a Russian-made Buk missile fired from territory held by pro-Moscow separatists in eastern Ukraine. Relatives of the victims stood in silence for 2 minutes. 3 Russians and a Ukrainian have been charged with murder for their alleged roles in the missile launch, but will be tried in absentia as Russia and Ukraine do not extradite their citizens. An international investigative team concluded last year that individuals in Russia using official phone lines were in almost daily telephone contact with rebels in the area where the missile was launched. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz.
The Iditarod dog sled race is underway in Alaska as 57 mushers and their teams of up to 16 dogs each will travel nearly 1,000 miles from Willow, north of Anchorage, to the small gold rush town of Nome. The mushers and their dogs will face deep snow this year, and the trip is expected to take up to 11 days to complete. But the animal rights group PETA says that race is cruel to the dogs. It's calling on the sponsors to drop out. So far, Alaska Airlines dropped its sponsorship. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama, and thank you so much for doing so. You're listening to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I'm so glad that you're listening because tonight's show has been fabulous. I do want to remind you, and I'm not going to harp on this, but if you have a way or an interest in helping these tornado victims, they need diapers, they need anything, really, because there's so many places that there is just absolutely not a house standing. That to me is astounding. Nashville was hit hard. Cookeville was hit harder. These were F4s. And I live in the tornado belt down here in Alabama, so I know that strikes fear into my heart. That is not something you want to always have to cope with. So it's just a really interesting thing, and they need us. Lord, everybody needs help. Pick somebody. Just make somebody's world better. And we are going to come back to Nancy Tremain, who is my guest tonight, and I know y'all have been enjoying us discussing all of her experiences because she has had them. She was chosen. And it just amazes me that people can be, she didn't think she was that strong. She wouldn't have gotten this job if she wasn't that strong. Her job is to help initiate communication between these different beings, these different species, and humans and alien. We were talking about the downloads, Nancy, and the first time I ever heard someone discuss a download was Grant Cameron, and he's got some great books on that topic as well. But Yours are interesting. Tell people what you told me about, what it feels like is happening. It's interesting.
Like someone opens the top of your head and just pours all of this information in all at once. And I've got to quickly come to and draw and write everything that I was just given. Well, it's still fresh and it's right there. And I keep track of every day. I keep a log every day, a diary, because it seems to be escalating, and I think that's what happens to so-called hardcore experiencers. Things are really picking up, escalating. The high strangeness is a nonstop. It's just nonstop for me.
That fascinates me, because how can you process so much information? And what are some examples of it?
I have to laugh when people ask me. I say, I just take the messages. I don't understand it. And I don't. And sometimes it takes me a couple of years to understand it. And it's some of it's just really sinking in now. In October of 2015, I was asked by Mr. several times. He kept telling me he needed me to tap in. So I laid on the couch and put myself in a deep meditation, and I found myself. Before I even talk about this, I'm going to quote a term by Jim Marrs, because I'm going to reach people's mental boggle point. This is
Jim
a coin
Marrs sometimes did my boggle point. So
yep.
Okay.
This is the point when even the most open-minded are confronted with information that is so unbelievable that the mind succumbs to a rubber band effect, snapping back to something more comfortable or socially acceptable. Because I understand that you're listening and you're thinking, whoa, but hear me out. So I found myself,
my attention.
I found myself with Mr., who was not in physical form. He was in energy form. And we seemed to glide down a ramp, and I knew we were in the lower level of the ship. And we were greeted by an angelic being with an overly exaggerated smile. And the entire room was all computer chipboards. Now, you have to understand that I know nothing about the computer. I mean, nothing. I started writing my second book just like my first in my Google Drafts. And there were several angels, and they were all at their own stations. And the love in that room, unbelievable love. They were all working together. And I understood that they were all different species, although they all looked exactly alike. They were like cookie cutter angelic beings.
That's interesting.
And they were working. And I was told, we are not alien to this planet or any planet. We've always been here. And then I was told how they travel, and they were validating an illustration that I had drawn in my first book of me standing amid all of these ships and orbs and rods. Mm-hmm. And they said, we travel as ships, rods, and orbs of different colors, shapes, and sizes. And they are all, quote, light, knowledge, energy, sending and receiving antennas. And then they started downloading me, and I was shown the alteration of DNA and told that they were removing the emotions of rage, hatred, desire for war, emotions that we don't need. They've been upgrading our DNA for hundreds of years.
Interesting.
then it was like school. This was a school. It was like I was
the lesson.
Yes. And then I was made to feel all the emotions of pain that I had caused my daughter. And I felt all of it, the ugliness. I saw it and felt it through her eyes. And it was important, and I owned it.
Right.
And that gave me the ability to be able to go on and forgive myself, which I have.
That's the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And then I was shown, and they've done this twice, 2015 and 2017, with these circles. There's a small circle with a heart in the middle. And I was understand that was the heart of the universe. And there's a tail on the heart. You've seen the drawings of the hearts with tails. And it went into the second circle. And the second circle has the word love in it. And then outside of that is the largest circle, and that says past, present, and future. And I am told that they are all simultaneous. And there are small gaps within each of these circles with which we are able to enter other dimensions or realities. And the last vision that I was shown was a very distant picture that they brought in closer and closer and closer to me, and it was of a woman in a rocking chair. And as they brought it closer and closer to me, I saw that she was very old. I kept thinking what an old woman she was, and she was rocking a baby. And I didn't know what to make of it, and I was told, Nancy, you're not recognize yourself. This is you rocking your great-grandchild. We want you to know there is joy for you ahead. And then I found myself, back. I was on my sofa the whole time, but my soul entered my body, and I just started drawing and writing everything that they had told me as quickly as I could.
Well, don't you just think that is so astounding, though? Because how do you... It's just beautiful.
It is. It's all about love. It's so, and I always say to them, it's so simple, and it's almost humorous, because when Mr. gives me a message, I answer back. I feel it's more than telepathic. I feel his emotions. I feel his humor at me. I feel what he is feeling, as well as hear what he is saying.
Can I ask you a question about him?
Yes, you can. Any question.
Well, I find it interesting that this group of people are so loving and caring and concerned. And I have talked to people who fear reptilians more than snakes. Okay? Really.
Yes.
And it's something that has been proliferated through a propaganda program almost, to make these people, these beings, seem more fearsome than they. And I do not doubt, I never doubt, that any person can be as ferocious as they have to be. It's part of survival in our species. And, but the people that have made these things about them, like they hunt humans and they like it if we're scared, right? I mean, that's crazy. I have heard off the chain people who have their own issues tell me this. Yeah. And yet your experience and someone else who has come across my path has a similar experience with them. And there's never anything that is horrific or terrifying. It is messages of It's a calmness. You know, they help you to maintain you in the middle of talk with them.
Exactly. My experiences are all positive.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing negative. Absolutely nothing negative. Yeah, the reptilians have gotten a bad rap. They really have.
What do you think the goal is with that? Because I can think of no reason other than the powers that be, whoever you want to label that way, are just simply trying to, they're trying to make these people that are bringing words of peace into demons to us. Because that doesn't fit their agenda.
Exactly. Well, that's my mission, is to help people get past the fear and see the love. We judge people, how they look. Everything, every commercial, everything we watch is about beauty, physical.
Yeah.
And, it only lasts for so long.
Well, that's true. We age, we go on to our next phase. That just happens. And that's okay, because that's what the flow is. But I'm really kind of been out of shape that this has been the way this has been presented all this time. Ever since, well, I would venture to say before Roswell, when people were talking about the possibility of life out there and stuff. That's why people were shocked and amazed, but not overly so when people started talking about what had happened at Roswell. There's such an agenda, and you are really one of the people that is going to have a hard time with this, trying to overcome that. I'm glad that you're getting support with that, but it's got to be a little overwhelming.
Well, I can't tell you how many emails that I receive from women and men thanking me because they've had this similar experiences, and a lot of them are married and haven't been able to tell their husband or their wife, and they share with me their experiences because they need to be heard. And like after I spoke at Ozark, I met some really wonderful people that are still friends, that I'm still friends with.
Yes. Was it because they
yes.
knew?
Well, the one is an author. He was just getting ready to, he was finishing up his book, and he's got a PhD in so many things I couldn't even tell you. I know. And he thanked me and told me that I had given him the strength to release his book. So
that's pretty cool.
His name is Dave Shoup, and his book is UFOs First Person, and he talks about years of encounters and how he was kidnapped, beaten. They broke into his house. They threatened him. Even his book, there are chapters missing because they wouldn't let him release it.
Oh my goodness.
But his struggles with the government agencies to get his story to the American public. Yeah. And I met a...
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
So his chapters were missing?
Yes. He couldn't put everything in that he wanted to. He was threatened. So this is the kind of stuff that goes on. Sometimes you can't share all your information. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
Well,
let me interrupt you just a second. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back. Thank you all for listening, and we will be right back with Nancy Tremain.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am sitting here having a fantastic conversation with a woman I admire greatly, Nancy Tremain. And Nancy, I so appreciate you sharing your experiences and the things that you have learned that matter. And that's fabulous that you have been given this mission. Does it not sometimes just overwhelm you? I mean,
absolutely.
It's a big planet. It's a big planet.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yes, I live in a heightened state of anxiety.
That I knew.
Yeah, and I suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder on top of that. So, people wonder how I stay as thin as I do. It's because my insides are going 100 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah. I know that's got to be so difficult.
Yes. I woke up in, I don't have the month, but it was 2017. And on my table, my coffee table, I keep a pad and paper and a pen. And I got up to words that I had written in my sleep. Now, I'm not a sleepwalker. I don't think I've ever walked in my sleep.
Right.
And the words were scribbled, but they were legible enough for me to read, and this is what it read. Realities or illusions are a part of the delusion we have created. We are living in a delusional illusion of our making. We are all players in this fictional theater we perform for our creators, a muse existing for our audience. The stage is set at birth and our performance has begun, end quote. But next to these words was a circle. Again, they always use circles. And inside the circles were the words light, love, sound, consciousness, energy. And outside of the circle, in quotation marks, were the words, the what is. First of all, I was to understand that the circle with the words in it depicted the womb that gave birth to humanity. And the quoted words, the what is God, or the supermind. Now this was so overwhelming for me and so over my head that I hung on to this for 13 or 12 days. I couldn't share it with anybody. I thought, my God, this is insane. But I was to understand that that circle containing all of those words was depicted the womb that gave birth to humanity. And I ended up sharing it with Kevin Estrella, who placed a quantum physicist in my past by the name of Jose Benella, who has written over 300 journals and papers and electrodynamics. I mean, he's so over my head. And he's asking me questions thinking I'm going to teach him something. And I said to him, you're the teacher. But he told me that my words were compatible with an author by the name of Paul Brunton, who I'd never heard of. His real name is Raphael Hirst, who was a British author of spiritual books. So he sent me some quotes by him, and they were very close to what I had written, enough that I realized I wasn't crazy, that this is information other people have gotten. And I went from that to being invited to speak at a Buddhist monastery. Now, I know nothing about Buddhism.
Are you serious?
Yes. And I went in.
Holy cats.
First of all, I wouldn't go because I had my own preconceived ideas of what Buddhism was. You know, I thought they were like Kung Fu, you know, David Carradine. Mm-hmm. But I went, and it was a beautiful experience. And I spoke to a small group. I'm so glad
you went. Yes.
Yes. It was a small group in Battle Creek, Michigan, about 90 miles from where I live. And they were so open-minded, so unlike the norm. They didn't judge. They asked lots of questions. And as I was leaving, Soka-san gave me a book that he had written. And I started reading it, and I found this symbol. I started checking up on, doing some research on Buddhism, and I found the symbol of the sunyata, another circle,
yes,
with a small...
They're big on those.
Yeah, with another opening in it. And after I left the that, about a week later, higher strangeness started. But
were you so shocked to be asked to speak to monks?
Yes, you know, really.
And that they were sentient about what you were bringing.
And I asked him, I told him, I wrote back, I said, I'll come, but I want to come in as a clean slate. I don't want to know anything. And that's how I went in. Mm-hmm. I wanted to keep my mind I knew nothing when I went in. And it's not at all what I expected. You know, it was like a family, a beautiful family of loving people. And after I spoke to the group, we went into a small room in Sokosan with his wife, Unyo, and another monk. And we all lined our chairs in front of him. And he told us not to try to create anything, but to sit in silence. And I'm telling you, it was the weirdest,
yes,
weirdest sensation. I felt that we were all on this same wave. And when Sokosan asked Unyo, his wife, what she was feeling, she said water. And I had been thinking we were on a wave.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And when I opened my eyes and looked at them, they didn't even look the same. And I said, you don't even look the same. And I realized that I was looking into their souls. I had looked beyond the physicality, and I was able to see in their souls. They looked totally different.
That's so cool.
It was.
I mean, with no doubt whatsoever, that's a very neat experience. I'm so glad you shared that, because I think I have 2 family members who are Buddhist.
Okay.
I think that it is a great discipline. And that's what it is. It's a discipline.
It is.
And, you know, the fact that you were invited to come there is a great honor.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a great honor. And the fact that they allowed you to see them in that fashion is a greater honor.
Yes.
Because that's what they do with their meditation and their other practices, is they are raising that vibration, raising those souls, and you got to see that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Just
we've become
wow.
Great friends, and he's invited me again, you know, to come out and speak about this second book.
Which is precognition. No.
Mm-hmm.
Is it precognition? Yes. All of a sudden, I just had a self-doubt moment. So it's been that kind of a day a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I can't believe that I doubted that. I've only seen it for like seven times a day for the last week as I'm trying to get my understanding of it and see what all is going on with it. But, you know, I can't wait till you go and share that with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had assumed that monks wouldn't be interested in aliens or abductions, marriage, sex. You know, all these assumptions without any research.
They're still humans, and it's preordained.
Yeah.
It is not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
I apologize for getting that wrong. Just a brain bubble. But they're human. Just, you know, they have those needs just like the reptilians that you interact with. They may not be human, but they still have those emotions and concerns and compassions.
And I was given a message. And the message was closed minds, closed doors. And I thought that was
that's a big.
Yeah, it was a great message. Yes, close minds, close doors. Exactly. And, you know, it turns out that Sokosan was more well-versed in ufology, way more than me. He knew all about Betty and Barney Hill, Bud Hopkins, Whitley Strieber, and Dr. John Mack had read all the books. And
that's fascinating.
Yes. And I had shamefully understood that he was much more knowledgeable in that area than I was. Yeah.
You have some of the neatest experiences as well as some of the freakiest.
Yeah, as well as some of the freakiest. Yeah, yes.
But in a good way, mostly.
Yes, I'd like to talk about one of the freaky ones.
Please. Let's see. Let me make sure before I just say, Yes, let's do this. You've got quite a few minutes, so please do.
Okay. This weird strangeness began with my telephone in 2014 from January until March with Cindy. This is the year before she died. Cindy and I would hear clicking and loud hang-ups, and we would hear people talking as we were on the phone. And all the conversations that we heard were always desperate calls. One woman was calling a hospital screaming. Another one was like a sting operation. And then my phone started calling Cindy 3 and 4 times in a row, and I wasn't even in the room, and she would answer it to nothing. And I called my service provider because her husband was he said, tell her to quit calling here and hanging up.
Well, you could understand that.
Yes, I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. I hated my phone. I called Boost Mobile and I said, what's going on? And the guy said, well, it's impossible. So New Year's Day, January 1st, 2017, my friend that lives an hour away from me calls me to ask me how my New Year's Eve was. And I'm telling him about a download and some information, which he really isn't interested in. He's a lawyer, and he's
Type A.
Not interested in ufology. But as we were talking, I looked at my phone. I saw my phone dial come up. The dial pad come up on my phone, and a number was pressed, and it was placed at the top of the screen. And I said, "What the heck?" And then a few seconds would go by, and another number would be pressed. And there were 7 numbers there, and I'm going, "What the heck?" He said, "Write them down." And I said, "Write them down? I'm Googling them." Yep. So I Googled them. And the 7 numbers were a patent to a 25-year NASA aerospace engineer for a movable ground-based recovery system. NASA's Spitzer Telescope and Sophia Project. So I wrote the guy. And of course, he never responded. But what was on the computer, a lot of the information was taken down, so I know he got my letter. I ended up getting 18 numbers, and when the 18th number was called, I said immediately, "They're done now." I don't know why I would even say that. Right. But at that moment, my entire body became plugged in, and this is something that happens to me. My entire body and the walls of my apartment are buzzing with energy. You can actually see a fuzzy energy on the walls.
Oh, wow.
I sat looking at those numbers in the computer because I couldn't believe it. And 2 days later, my friend sent me an email, which is not his character at all. He would have called me, but he sent me an email. And he said after we hung up the phone, he heard someone calling out numbers. It sounded like a woman's voice. He said he walked through his whole house and there wasn't anyone there. And so I told David Chase, who is a friend of mine, he's also an artist of reptilian beings. He surmised that just possibly, even though there was an hour difference between me and Tom, that Tom had become plugged in and he was actually hearing me thinking the numbers. And the next 5 numbers after the first 7 led me to the gene ID for the Homo sapien. Now, you can't make this crap up.
You cannot make that up.
No. And the last 6 numbers were also for a patent for electricity that used a lot of copper. I mean, I wrote to Dr. Ray Hernandez, who got back to me immediately. He always does. And he gave me the name of Brent Rains, who called me and told me about a John Keel, a man by the name of John Keel, who also received intelligent interaction.
Yes.
Yes, via AM, FM radio. Mm-hmm. So, and that was in the 60s. And then there was a Dr. George Hunt Williamson in 1952 who had communication via shortwave radio, Morse code, and telepathy. And Preston Dennett called me. And you know Preston Dennett, he's an author of I don't know how many books, but a lot. And one of his chapters is titled phone call from an alien. And we had a long conversation.
Oh, no.
Yes.
What were those odds?
And it was written about Dr. Jack Sarfati, the quantum physicist, who had a bizarre phone call from an alien. That is what it was. And I wrote to Preston Dennett, to Jack Sarfati also. And Preston Dennett said that there are enough accounts that have turned up to merit a very serious investigation into this. Nancy, and I can't say her last name, and I'm embarrassed. It's French. Trey. Do you know who I'm speaking of?
I do.
Yes, she also called me, and all these people called me to let me know that this wasn't an accident, that this is a message of some kind that I got to figure out. But while I was writing this second book, I decided to go back to the last 6 numbers and look at it on Google. And I typed them in, and you can't make this crap up. It said that in 3 days, that patent that had existed for 119 years was going to expire. Yes, a patent that had existed for 119 years was going to expire 3 days from when I pulled it up.
Oh, you should have gone and renewed that. I mean, just saying. Obviously, it was useful, and
yep. But I still don't know what the message is. But
wow, you've got work to do still.
Yeah, work to do still. Yes.
Well, I am so glad that you felt comfortable enough with me for us to do this, because I always find you fascinating. I enjoyed you so much when we were in Eureka Springs. And, I didn't get to go the next year because I got hurt, and that was a complete and total bummer, but I'm going to be there this year. But, it just was so fantastic because you're so obviously genuine.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I loved that. I loved that opportunity to speak there. And the audience was just such a positive audience. And
well, that was your tribe.
Yeah, it really was.
It was. And we're fixing to go to our final break. I cannot believe that this show is almost over. I am having such a good time with you. But, at any time you want to come back, please do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes.
But we will be right back, and we'll see you on the flip side.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. You are listening to the final segment of tonight's show here on Fate Mag Radio. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you have enjoyed our guest. You know, Nancy Tremain is special. She is an awful lot of fun. And she has written these books to share and, you know, to help us because Lord knows we need some help. So I think that it's fantastic that we have other species, other people from other dimensions and other locales who are trying to help us not off ourselves. So, you know, for lack of a better term, right? But I'm so glad that you're doing this, Nancy.
I am too. I really am.
So before we get any further, I don't want us to run out of time and you not be able to tell people how to find you. Would you like to share your information?
Yes, I'd like to shout out to Philip Mantle, who with Flying Disc Press, who published my book, Preordained. He just won the Lifetime Achievement Award in UK for the Academy of Paranormal Arts and Sciences.
Yes.
I'm proud to have him as a publisher. And Grant Cameron, who wrote the foreword for this book, and actually published my first book. So many people. He's a
pretty special man. Philip is too.
Mm-hmm. Just so many people to thank that have been on this journey with me. Doug Ault for his support. Although we've never met in person, we have spent many hours talking and Skyping and phone conversations and emails, and we've been a great support to each other.
Well, I think that's just a fantastic thing. You know, for some of the absolute high strangeness that applies to your experiences, you have been so accepted. I feel that you are in this community and supported, and people care about you, and they try to make sure that you are aware that you're cared for.
Yes.
That's even more important than being cared for, or, you know, for them to let you know.
I appreciate them so much. I just thank them so much. Yes. I feel so much love from them. Genuine love.
You know, it's, I have found that every experiencer's experience, I mean, every person who's abducted, every person who is communicated with, you know, Calvin Parker, his aliens look like the Michelin Man. Right? With
yes.
a pointed head. They were scary. I mean, because they had claws, like the robot claws. And I'm like him. He and his bride are some of my favorite people. Wayne is awesome. But, you know, then yours are reptilians. And, you know, I have other friends whose were, well, Travis's were Greys, and then, you know, the Nordics. So they present in a way to make you either be intimidated or not. What do you think about when you hear of people like Calvin's and Travis's very, you know, blow your mind experiences, and yours is a blow your mind experience, but you are treated with love and they let you know that they care that much?
Yes. Well, with their experiences, they each had the one experience that affected them their entire life.
Well, Calvin had two.
Oh, did he have to? Okay.
Calvin actually had another one later with the same beings.
With the same being? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's still not a relationship. Yours is a relationship.
Yes, it's a positive, loving relationship. Yes, which I guess is rare.
It would seem so.
Although I do have friends on Facebook, and there is actual groups, formed for positive reptilians. Bridget Smith is one.
Okay.
Misha Johnston is another. So there are other people who've had positive relationships with them.
Well, I wish that more people were open with that, because, if it just seems like they've gotten such bad press.
Exactly.
Not necessarily that people have had bad experiences with them, but they just look different and scary to, different to a lot of people is all it takes to be scary.
Mm-hmm.
We see that in our society all the time. And,
yeah.
But they've really gotten a bad rap.
Well, I think that's why we've gone into this consciousness aspect of phenomenon now, gone beyond the need for physical. I think hardcore experiencers have moved beyond the need for the physical.
Yes, I would agree with that based on the people that I have spoken with. And you were the first person that I ever heard actually legitimately describe their relationship with the people in contact with them. Since then, I've been very fortunate to talk with others, but I'm just so knocked out by how what bad press this has affected everyone's outlook. I mean, it's just like unfair.
Well, reptilians have been around for 300 million years. I don't know. I was just reading. They were gods. They're etched in stone.
Well, they are.
The ancients drew pictures of them as gods. And
yes. And there's a lot of that. When you go and look at the stuff that Eric von Däniken was sharing back in the day.
Exactly.
The places that he was going, they were all, or they appeared to almost all be reptilians.
Exactly.
The hieroglyphs depict them. So
it was so hard for me to say that it's my belief that they created us, because I met with such. But we'll go back to Genesis. They were way before Genesis.
I think that there have been so many times that this planet has had to start over.
Yes.
Based on archaeology. So,
and we're due for another cleansing.
Well, we are. Well, because, Atlas Shrugged is just kind of real. The planet can only take so much, and then it kind of shakes off like a dog and moves on, apparently.
Exactly.
But, when you're a parent, you hate to think that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't want to get negative, but yeah, you have to accept what's going on. I mean, you see how much we've changed as a species just in the last couple of decades, and how empathy has just waned right out of us.
That's the scariest part.
Yeah,
because
we've become
numb. We sure are saying the same thing a lot, and then doing our mhms at the same time a lot. We obviously agree on things.
Well, it's one disaster after another, and you become numb to all of it.
Yes.
And that's why it's so wonderful that you're asking for people to reach out and help these victims.
Well, oh my gosh, it's horrid.
It is.
I mean, there was one small family, a mom and dad and a baby, and their parents posted their pictures saying, maybe they're hurt, maybe people, they can't say who they are, so if you could just share this picture. And
Yes.
they wound up having been killed, all three of them.
Yeah. Oh, it reminds me of 9/11 when they were showing the pictures. You've seen this person. Oh, yeah.
Same thing. Maybe they're hurt and can't talk.
Exactly.
Because hope springs eternal. We are to be as, kill and maim and whatever sometimes. We really are a hopeful species. We seem to, we get angry and we kill and we do really stupid stuff like, usually shows up on America's Funniest Home Videos. But, but we do have heart. We do have compassion. And that's why sometimes when I see the behaviors exhibited, I'm like, oh, you need to go back. Just go back and think about what you said. Yeah. And then come talk to me some more. Yeah. I think we need a global timeout. So but I am hopeful. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the love mantras and, people who are open to these things more so than I have in the last decade. I think a lot of people are realizing this is about to be it. You better step it up, or there's going to be some pretty heavy repercussions.
Exactly. There's a lot of positivity on Facebook.
Yes.
It really is.
I hope we keep seeing more of it, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. I think we are coming together.
Yes. I'm hoping that it's going to continue. This coronavirus panic that everybody is like hiding from each other with. It is bad.
I know going to the funeral today, I was afraid. I didn't know if people were going to hug or shake hands or do the elbow.
I do live long and prosper.
There was a lot of hugging, yes.
Hugging is so important.
It hasn't hit Michigan. We haven't had one case of the corona in Michigan yet.
We don't have one in Alabama either, knock wood. It's all around us, but not here so far.
Mm-hmm.
They are saying it in Georgia and Tennessee, so I'm fairly sure it's only a matter of time.
Yeah,
but,
it's a matter of time. It'll be everywhere. Yeah.
And I'm just ready to see people, take a deep breath and loosen those shoulders up and just go back to living.
Yeah, and enjoy each day that you have.
Well, because you're not guaranteed them.
Exactly. Just enjoy every day as it comes. That's what I try to do. Make the most of it.
Well, the alternative is unthinkable.
Yes.
Because then you lose a lot of days and, each second counts. I firmly believe that. Well, I am so very glad that you're here. I'm going to be sharing your Amazon page on my Facebook when I post the show. And I hope you sell all the books. I am so proud of you, and I think that you've really overcome a lot, and you've come a long way just in 2 years.
Yeah, I really have. Yes. And you could tell that I hit the wall here, but I had the funeral today, and this whole past week I've been numb. Ever since Chief Bagall passed, I've just been numb.
I knew when you posted that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So.
I'm glad that you went ahead and came.
Yes, and I did get closure by seeing him and speaking to him and telling him that I'm going to get the word out and share because he needs to be heard too.
Yes, he does. And you're just the girl to do it.
Yeah.
I have utmost confidence in you. And I said that tongue in cheek because I know that he probably still sees you as that little girl.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I saw him, father. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time, if you can believe it. This has just been such a great time, Nancy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it.
Well,
And,
thank you for trusting
everyone
me
that's
to be here.
listening, thank you for putting up with me.
Well, we got a little rocky there at the beginning, and that's okay. We were trying new things, and then, some things were not as easy as others, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's all about the journey.
Absolutely. So, what a journey.
I know, right? Well, I want to let our listeners know that we appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. Tomorrow night will be the Paranormal Pride with Denise Pridemore. On Wednesday, Paranormal Experience, I will be welcoming my guest, Willie Gibson. I love Willie. This is going to be a great show. On Friday, there will be live feed, but no shows because Shelley Burke Robertson is going to have her jail premiered in the 2-hour season premiere of Portals to Hell with Jack Osborne and Katrina Weidman. So we're going to be having a party in Ohio. So we'll live feed and live stream, but we're excited, and it's on travel, so 2-hour special. So come on and join us with that. It'll be so much fun. And then I will be back. I'm really excited. I am going to be talking with Tim Comwell next week on Fate Magazine because you know what? He found the link between his UFOs and earthquakes. And he sent me a note and said, I've got it. I need to come back. So he is. That'll be great. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks again.
I enjoyed you. And you know what? All of you listening out there, this is your time. This is when you get a chance to go out there and have a good day. Y'all take care.